You know how it is? You're keen to understand something that, well, really matters to your well-being, like this whole world of gut bacteria and how it affects your health.
Hmm.
But sorting through all the information, it can feel overwhelming, right?
Hmm.
So, what if we could just boil it down to the essential, evidence-backed insights that you can actually use?
That's exactly what we're setting out to do for you today.
Yeah.
We're taking a deep dive into probiotics and prebiotics
Yeah.
and our expert guide. It's a comprehensive guideline published just last year, February 2023, by the World Gastroenterology Organization, the WGO.
The WGO. Yeah.
Yeah. Think of this as your shortcut to understanding the core principles, of the gut microbiome without getting totally lost in the weeds.
Precisely. And this isn't some random internet article, right? It's a guideline put together by a global team of experts. They've looked at everything, the history, the definitions, what's available for you to buy, the safety aspects, and most importantly, the real-world health applications.
So our mission today is pretty simple: to pull out the most crucial information from this WGO guideline and give you a clear, insightful understanding of probiotics and prebiotics. The fundamental ideas, how they work inside you, and what the science genuinely suggests about when they might actually be helpful for your health.
Okay, let's unpack this for you, starting with a bit of history. Because it turns out this whole idea of gut bacteria influencing health isn't new at all, is it?
Not at all. Over a century ago, a Nobel Prize-winning Russian scientist named Eli Mechnikov proposed that lactic acid bacteria, or LAB, could actually promote a longer life.
Wow.
Yeah, his core idea, something we're still exploring today with probiotics, was about balancing the bacteria in our gut. He even developed a diet based on fermented milk. Pretty forward-thinking stuff, right?
Really ahead of his time.
It really was. And that initial thought, it sparked a lot more research. Around the same time, you had other key discoveries. For instance, in 1917, a German professor called Alfred Nissl isolated a specific harmless strain of Escherichia coli from a soldier who, stayed healthy during a bad outbreak.
Ah,
That strain, Escherichia coli Nissl 1917, is still recognized today as a probiotic. And it isn't even a lab.
interesting.
Then, Henry Tissier at the Pasteur Institute identified bifidobacterium in breastfed babies with the idea of using it to treat diarrhea by sort of pushing out the not-so-good bacteria.
Right, competition.
Exactly. And if you fast forward a bit to Japan, Dr. Minoru Shirota isolated Lactobacillus paracasi strain Shirota to tackle diarrheal outbreaks. And what's really interesting for you to know is that a probiotic product using this exact strain has been commercially available since 1935.
1935, that's amazing. It really shows you how long scientists have been thinking about this.
Absolutely. And these early discoveries really set the stage for where we are now. The WGO guideline points out that there have been over 1,500 clinical trials on probiotics published in PubMed. Now, while the guideline acknowledges that, these studies vary in quality,
Sure.
that sheer volume of research suggests a growing body of evidence supporting real benefits for different health outcomes that you might be interested in.
So after all that history, what exactly are probiotics? Let's get a clear definition down for you.
Okay. According to the WGO, probiotics are live microorganisms that, when administered in adequate amounts, confer a health benefit on the host.
Okay, live, adequate amounts, health benefit. Those seem key.
They are. That definition is crucial for you because it highlights exactly those points. They need to be alive, you need to take enough of them, and they have to actually provide a proven health benefit.
Now, I remember reading in the guideline about a big change, something with the Lactobacillus family. What was that all about?
That's right. Yeah, that was a big one. In 2020, the Lactobacillus genus went through a major reorganization. Basically, because it was such a diverse group, scientists decided to redefine it, creating 23 NUW genera.
23.
Yeah. This included some really well-known probiotic species that you might have heard of. For example, what was once Lactobacillus casei is now Lactobacillus casei.
Okay.
Lactobacillus plantarum is now Lactobacillus plantarum. And Lactobacillus rhamnosus is now Lactobacillus rhamnosus. There are quite a few others listed in Table 2 of the guideline, like Lactobacillus brevis becoming Levolactobacillus brevis, and Lactobacillus salivarius now being Lactobacillus salivarius. Even Lactobacillus fermentum and Lactobacillus reiteri got new prefixes. Most Lactobacillus.
Wow, okay, that's a lot of changes. So are any of the old familiar names still around for you to recognize, or is it all new?
No, thankfully. The guideline specifically mentions that some well-known ones like Lactobacillus acidophilus, Lactobacillus gasseri, Lactobacillus crispatus, L. johnsonii, L. helveticus, and Lactobacillus delbrueckii subsipera. Bulgaricus, often just called L. bulgaricus, they remain within the Lactobacillus genus.
Oh, good. So some things will still look familiar to you.
Exactly. This renaming might seem really technical, but it highlights how our understanding is constantly evolving, right?
Right.
And why seeing the specific new name on a product label is crucial for you to know exactly what you're getting.
That makes sense. Okay, so that's probiotics. What about prebiotics? What's the deal there for you?
Right, prebiotics. They're defined as a selectively fermented ingredient that results in specific changes in the composition and/or activity of the gastrointestinal microbiota, thus conferring benefits upon host health.
Selectively fermented ingredient.
Yeah, the key here for you is selectively fermented. Think of it this way. Prebiotics act as food specifically for your beneficial gut bacteria, helping them to thrive and grow.
Okay, like fertilizer for the good gardening bugs.
Kind of, yeah. And this selective part is
Mm,
key. It means prebiotics are designed to feed the good bacteria and not necessarily the ones we don't want to encourage in your gut.
Gotcha. And I've heard the term symbiotics used sometimes. How do they fit into this picture for you?
Symbiotics are simply a combination of both probiotics and prebiotics. The guideline points out two types: complementary and synergistic.
Okay.
A complementary symbiotic is just a mix of a probiotic and a prebiotic, where both components independently meet their definitions and are used in a way that benefits your health. Simple enough.
Right.
A synergistic symbiotic, on the other hand, is a bit more specific. It's where a live microbe is specifically chosen because it uses a co-administered substrate, the prebiotic, and together they lead to a documented health benefit for you.
Ah, so they work as a team.
Exactly. In this case, the individual components might not even need to meet the strict criteria for a probiotic or prebiotic on their own. It's the combination that provides the benefit for you.
Interesting distinction.
Yeah. So to put it simply for you, if probiotics are the live helpers, prebiotics are like their favorite food, and symbiotics are like giving them both together, either just alongside each other or as a specific synergistic pair.
That's clear. And what about postbiotics? That's a newer term you might be hearing.
Right, postbiotics. They're defined as a preparation of inanimate microorganisms and/or their components that confers a health benefit on the host.
Inanimate, so not live.
Exactly. Unlike probiotics, which are live, postbiotics are essentially the beneficial byproducts or even the dead cells of microorganisms that can still have a positive impact on your health. Think of the beneficial stuff they produce, even after they're no longer living.
Okay. Now, the guideline also mentions lactic acid bacteria, or ASIBO, as a functional classification. What does that mean for you?
Yeah, functional classification. Basically, LAB is a group of non-harmful bacteria that share the characteristic of producing lactic acid from carbohydrates through fermentation.
Ah, like in yogurt and things.
Precisely. This is important for food preservation, as the acidic environment they create stops bad organisms from growing. The guideline lists examples of genera included in ill, such as Lactobacillus and its newly named relatives like Lactobacillus and Lactoplantobacillus, as well as Streptococcus thermophilus.
Okay.
However, it's important for you to remember that not all probiotics are L. For example, that E. coli strain, Nissl 1917 we mentioned, and the yeast Saccharomyces boulardii, they're both well-known probiotics, but definitely not LL.
Right. Good point. And just to circle back on fermentation then, the guideline mentions it as a process used for food preservation. So things like yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, those all involve fermentation, right?
Exactly. Fermentation is a process where microorganisms transform food, often producing lactic acid, ethanol, and other metabolic end products. It's been used for centuries to preserve a huge variety of raw agricultural materials: grains, vegetables, milk, meat, fish, all for you and for the benefit of storing food longer.
Okay, so now you've got the definitions down. How exactly do these probiotics and prebiotics work their magic in your body? Let's start with prebiotics.
Okay, prebiotics, as we discussed, primarily work by selectively feeding the beneficial bacteria in your gut. This can lead to an increase in their numbers and activity, which can potentially crowd out less desirable or even harmful microbes and reduce their negative activities.
Makes sense. Feed the good guys.
Right. And prebiotics can also have an impact on your immune function, though the mechanisms there are still being explored.
And probiotics, what's going on there inside you? They're live, so it must be more complex.
Yeah, probiotics have a more diverse range of mechanisms. The guideline refers to Figure 3 in Table 5, which illustrate these interactions quite well for you. Probiotics can influence your gut health by affecting mucosal immunity. That's the immune system lining your gut.
Okay.
They can interact directly with the other microbes in your gut, both the good ones and the potentially not so good ones. They also produce metabolic byproducts, like those short-chain fatty acids we hear so much about.
Ah, yes. SCF phase.
Exactly. Those have their own health effects throughout your body, even beyond the gut. Think of these as little messengers produced by the good bacteria, which then go on to have positive effects. And incredibly, they can even communicate directly with your own cells through chemical signaling.
That's fascinating. Direct communication. So what kind of benefits do these mechanisms translate into for you then?
Well, through these actions, probiotics can help in several ways for you. They can directly antagonize pathogens, basically competing with them for resources, and even producing substances that inhibit their growth.
Like biological warfare in your gut.
Sorta.
Hmm.
They can also improve the overall environment in your gut, for example, by altering the pH. They can help to strengthen your intestinal barrier, making it harder for harmful substances to leak out, the leaky gut idea.
Right.
And they can play a role in modulating your immune response, helping to calm down excessive inflammation while still allowing you to effectively respond to real threats. It's quite a balancing act.
This is all great information for you to have. Now let's talk about what you actually see on the shelves navigating the marketplace, because there are just so many different products out there claiming to contain probiotics.
It's a very diverse market indeed. The WGO guideline points out for you that probiotic-containing products range from everyday foods like yogurt to meal replacements, dietary supplements in the form of tablets and capsules, natural health products in Canada, and even over-the-counter and prescription drugs in some cases.
And I'd imagine the claims they can make on these products vary quite a bit depending on how they're regulated for you.
Absolutely, that's a key point. Most commonly, probiotics and prebiotics are sold as foods or supplements that you can easily access. In these categories, regulations often restrict direct claims about treating specific diseases.
Right, you see more general health claims.
Exactly. Claims tend to be more general, focusing on improving or maintaining health, and are typically targeted at generally healthy individuals like you. However, in Canada, they have this natural health product category, which allows for approved claims and labeling for use in managing certain mild health conditions that you might be dealing with.
Okay.
For over-the-counter and prescription drugs, which are less common for probiotics, the claims are, of course, much more specific to the prevention or treatment of disease and backed by rigorous evidence.
So from a science perspective, what information should you, as a savvy consumer, really be looking for on the label of a good probiotic product?
Okay, the guideline emphasizes several key pieces of information for you. First and foremost, it should clearly state the genus, species, and the specific strain designation of each probiotic it contains, using current scientifically recognized names like those new names we discussed.
Strain is important, not just species.
Crucial. Then, it should also list the viable count, that's the number of live bacteria, usually in CFUs or colony-forming units, for each strain at the end of the product's shelf life, not just when it was manufactured.
Ah, at the use-by date.
Precisely. Recommended storage conditions are also important for you to ensure the product remains effective. The recommended dose is key too, and it should be based on studies showing it produces the claimed physiological effect.
Not just some random number.
Right.
Hmm?
And finally, the label should provide an accurate description of the physiological effect, as permitted by law, and contact information for the manufacturer in case you have any questions or concerns.
It's incredible how much the probiotic market has grown. The guideline mentions some pretty big numbers that might surprise you.
It has absolutely exploded. The guideline cites a 2015 report valuing the global market at over 32 billion US dollars back in 2013.
Wow.
And projections estimate it'll reach over $85 billion by 2027 with a really rapid annual growth rate. With so many products out there for you to choose from, it can be genuinely challenging to know what's best.
And the guideline also touches on the difficulty for you in matching specific products to the scientific evidence, right? Because the studies use specific strains, but the product names might be different.
Exactly. Most scientific recommendations are based on very specific strains of probiotics, but the product names you see might vary depending on where you are, branding, etc. The guideline mentions efforts in Canada and the US, like the probiotic charts available online,
Oh, yeah, I've seen those.
which try to link specific commercially available products to the available scientific evidence for certain conditions. These can be really helpful resources for you to check out.
Definitely helpful. What about product quality? Are all probiotic products you find created equal? Or is there variation?
Unfortunately, no. The quality can vary significantly depending on the manufacturer. Because most aren't made to the same strict standards as pharmaceutical drugs, regulatory oversight of quality standards can be less stringent, especially for supplements.
So what should you look out for?
Key quality aspects for you to consider are potency, ensuring the product actually maintains the claimed number of live bacteria through its entire shelf life, purity, making sure it's free from harmful contaminants or pathogens, and identity, verifying that it actually contains the strains listed on the label using the correct scientific names.
Potency, purity, identity. Got it. Dosage seems to be a tricky area for you too. The guideline mentions that the effective dose can vary quite a bit depending on the strain.
That's a crucial point for you to understand. There's absolutely no one-size-fits-all dose for probiotics. What works for one strain for a specific condition might be completely ineffective for another, or even for the same strain, but for a different health issue.
Right.
The guideline gives a great example for you. Bifidobacterium longum subspecies, longum 35624, has shown benefits for some IBS symptoms at a dose of just 100 million CFU per day.
That sounds relatively low.
It is, compared to others. Some other products might require hundreds of billions of CFU, maybe even several times a day, to show an effect. The dosage really needs to be based on human studies that have demonstrated a health benefit for that specific strain for the condition you're interested in.
And the use-by date is really important for that viable count for you, right?
Absolutely. Because probiotics are live organisms, their numbers naturally decline over time due to storage conditions, temperature, humidity, etc. Responsible manufacturers will often include, and overage basically, more bacteria than stated on the label at the time of production.
To account for the die-off.
Exactly. To ensure that the product still contains at least the declared dose of viable bacteria at the end of its shelf life, indicated by the use-by or expiry date, it's this date, not the manufacturing date, that tells you whether you're likely getting the stated dose.
Good tip.
The guideline also briefly mentions spore-forming probiotics, like some bacillus species. They tend to be more resistant to environmental stresses like heat and stomach acid, which might give them better shelf stability for you.
That sounds advantageous.
It can be. But the guideline notes that the strongest body of evidence for clinical efficacy currently lies with the non-spore-forming probiotics, like the lactobacilli and bifidobacteria we've mostly been discussing.
So the bottom line for you seems to be, do your homework and try to buy from reputable manufacturers.
Precisely. Given that some studies have unfortunately found products that don't even meet their label claims for potency or contain the wrong strains, choosing reliable manufacturers with good quality control practices is really essential for you.
Okay, let's shift gears to a really important aspect for you. Safety. Are probiotics generally safe for most people?
The good news for you is that, yes, for the most part, most probiotics currently in use have a long history of safe use, either in fermented foods that humans have been consuming for centuries, or as microbes that naturally live in healthy humans anyway.
That's reassuring.
Yeah, the guideline specifically highlights the generally low risk associated with lactobacillus and bifidobacterium species for the majority of healthy individuals like you.
That's good for you to hear. But are there any situations where you should be more cautious? Certain groups of people?
Yes, definitely. The guideline advises caution, particularly for individuals with severely compromised immune function or serious underlying diseases. In these cases, the use of probiotics should generally be limited to strains that have specifically proven safety and effectiveness in these specific populations through clinical trials.
Okay, so not for everyone in every situation.
Right. It also emphasizes the importance of careful evaluation, including ethical review, for any new probiotics being developed or proposed new uses of existing probiotics to ensure safety for everyone. But for traditional lab, which have been used in food fermentation for a long time, they're generally considered safe for oral consumption, foods and supplements for most healthy people like you at the levels typically found in these products.
Okay, that makes sense. Now we get to what I think is the most interesting part for you, the clinical applications. Based on this WGO guideline, when might probiotics and prebiotics actually be beneficial for your health? Where's the evidence strongest?
Right, this is where you see the evidence in action.
Mm.
The guideline provides a really comprehensive overview, and it's so important for you to remember, as we've stressed, that for probiotics, the effects are often very strain-specific and dose-specific.
Strain, strain, strain.
Exactly. And the same applies to the specific formulations and types of prebiotics. The guideline includes detailed tables 8 and 9, which are incredibly useful. They list specific strains and prebiotics that have shown positive results in well-designed clinical trials for various adult and pediatric conditions that might be relevant to you or your family.
Okay.
Let's maybe focus on a couple of key areas where the WGO guideline indicates some of the most promising results for you. Maybe diarrhea and IBS would be good examples. They're quite common.
Great idea. Let's start with something common that you might have experienced. Diarrhea. What does the evidence say there? Acute diarrhea first, perhaps.
Okay. For treating acute infectious diarrhea in children, the guideline notes that some specific probiotic strains are indeed useful. They can help reduce both how severe it is and how long it lasts, often shortening it by about a day.
Just one day.
About a day, yeah. Which might not sound huge, but for a sick child and worried parent, it can make a difference. Several meta-analyses support these findings, suggesting certain probiotics are likely safe and effective in this situation for your child.
Okay. What about preventing it?
For preventing acute diarrhea, the evidence is a bit more complex for you. While some probiotics can be effective in specific settings, like preventing travelers' diarrhea or diarrhea in daycare settings, the guideline highlights a Cochrane meta-analysis that suggests probiotics might not make a big difference overall for diarrhea lasting longer than 48 hours, so timing might be key. Giving them early could be important for prevention.
Okay. What about antibiotic-associated diarrhea? That's something a lot of people experience, maybe even you, when taking antibiotics.
Yes, and there's better news there. There's moderate evidence, according to several meta-analyses cited in the guideline, that certain probiotics can help prevent antibiotic-associated diarrhea, AAD, in both adults and children like you who are taking antibiotics. The effect is described as moderate, but significant.
Moderate, okay.
Similarly, for the more serious C. difficile-associated diarrhea, CDAD, which is often triggered by antibiotics, the guideline concludes with moderate certainty that probiotics can be effective in preventing it. This seems particularly true in patients on antibiotics who are considered at higher risk for C. diff.
That's potentially very useful.
It is. And interestingly for you, there's even a meta-analysis mentioned that suggests potential benefits in preventing radiation-induced diarrhea, say for cancer patients undergoing radiotherapy.
Interesting. Okay, moving on to irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS. This affects so many people, maybe even some you know. Is there any hope there with probiotics?
IBS is a tricky one, but yes, there's some hope. The guideline highlights a consistent finding across several studies for you. Some probiotic treatments can lead to a noticeable reduction in abdominal bloating and gas or flatulence. These are really common and bothersome IBS symptoms for many people.
Bloating and gas, okay. What about pain?
Additionally, some specific strains have shown potential in easing abdominal pain and providing overall symptom relief for individuals with functional abdominal pain, which often overlaps significantly with IBS. Again, the crucial details are in Tables 8 and 9. In the guideline, they provide specifics on which strains have been studied in this context for you to explore further if IBS is relevant to you.
So it's not a cure-all, but potential help for specific symptoms with specific strains.
Exactly. It's about finding the right match.
What about for those really tough early months with a colicky baby that you or someone you know might be going through? Anything there?
Yes, actually. There is evidence highlighted that specific strains, namely Lactobacillus reuteri, DSM-17938, and also Bifidobacterium animalis, SSP, Lactus BB12, can significantly reduce crying time in breastfed infants who have colics.
Really? That could be welcome news for many new parents you might know.
Absolutely. Reducing crying time, even moderately, can make a huge difference in those early weeks and months.
Definitely. And for people who struggle with lactose malabsorption, something you might be sensitive to, does yogurt really help?
The science backs that up, yes. The guideline confirms that Streptococcus thermophilus and Lactobacillus delbrueckii, subspecies bulgaricus, which are the characteristic bacteria used to make yogurt with live cultures, have been clearly shown to improve lactose digestion and reduce the associated symptoms of intolerance for you.
So the bacteria help digest the lactose for you?
Essentially, yes. They produce the lactase enzyme that many people lack. This benefit has been confirmed in several well-controlled studies using yogurt containing these live cultures.
Good to know. Finally, the guideline touches on a very serious condition in premature babies, necrotizing enterocolitis, or NEC.
Yes, and this is a critical area where probiotics have shown significant promise. The guideline emphasizes that probiotic supplementation has been shown to reduce the risk of NEC in preterm neonates who are very vulnerable.
That's huge.
It really is. Meta-analyses cited have even shown a reduced risk of death in probiotic-treated groups, with a number needed to treat of just 20 to prevent one death associated with NEC.
Wow.
However, and this is vital, the guideline also stresses the absolute importance for you to understand that ensuring adequate quality and safety in the specific probiotic product used is crucial for this very fragile population.
Yeah.
Not all preparations have been shown to be effective or safe, so careful selection and quality control are paramount.
Understood. It's so important for you to remember then that the effectiveness really does seem to come down to the specific strain and the specific dose for each condition, as highlighted repeatedly and detailed in those tables 8 and 9.
Absolute.
And table 7, I recall, outlines the different levels of evidence, like high, moderate, low, for these benefits, which is also crucial for you to consider when evaluating claims.
Exactly. Those tables, along with the evidence grading, are your go-to resource within the guideline for the detailed evidence on particular strains and the strength of that evidence for various gastrointestinal conditions in both adults and children that might be relevant to your health decisions.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful for you, really boiling down a complex topic. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are maybe a couple of the most surprising or impactful things that stand out to you from all of this information we've shared, things you want our listener to really take away?
Good question. For me, I think two things are particularly striking for you to take away. First, the sheer specificity of probiotic effects. It really drives home that it's not enough to just say, take a probiotic.
Yeah.
It genuinely matters which strain, at what dose, and for what specific condition you're looking to address. That level of precision is key.
Right. No blanket recommendation.
Definitely not. And the second thing, maybe, is the long history of this field. Going back over a century to Metchnikoff, with continuous scientific investigation, thousands of trials leading to our current, albeit still evolving, understanding. It's a real testament to the ongoing quest to understand the intricate relationship between our gut microbes and your overall health.
That's a great point for you to consider. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution, and the science is clearly still evolving rapidly. So for you, the listener, as you continue on your journey of being well-informed, maybe consider this. With the growing understanding of the gut microbiome's influence on so many aspects of health beyond just the gut, affecting immunity, maybe even mood, what other surprising links might we uncover in the future? Could probiotics or prebiotics, or maybe even postbiotics, play a role in areas we haven't even seriously considered yet?
That's a fascinating question for you to ponder, definitely. The research in this area is incredibly dynamic, and new connections between the gut microbiome and various aspects of your health, brain health, metabolic health, allergies, are constantly being explored. This deep dive, hopefully, has given you a solid foundation based on the WGO's expert review.
Yeah, a good starting point.
But it's really just the starting point for your understanding. There's so much more to learn.
Absolutely. So if you're interested in digging deeper, we definitely encourage you to explore the WGO guideline itself. It's publicly available, or perhaps to look into some of the specific strains we mentioned today if you have particular health interests. Empower yourself with the details. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive into probiotics and prebiotics. We really hope it's given you a clearer picture.